Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm making a video about the differences between German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois, and moreover I wanted to talk about some of the differences that I'm noticing in pop culture. A lot of the dogs that I'm seeing presented as Malinois are from working lines, and that makes a lot of sense because it's a working dog. Um, what people fail to recognize, though, is that there are also show lines of Malinois, and these show lines deviate dramatically from the working lines. And the same goes for German Shepherds. Um, I'm seeing a lot of comparison between the two breeds. And one thing that I noticed that's really interesting is a lot of people say, oh, my Malinois is mistaken for a German Shepherd. However, I would argue that what I'm seeing a lot of is that German Shepherds are being mistaken for Malinois. And let me clarify that. As we all know, or some may know, there are different lines of German Shepherds. There are working lines and there are show lines. And then within those two different lines, there are separate lines within those lines. For example, in the show lines, there's the West German show line, then there's the American show line. With the working lines, there's the Czech dogs, Slovak dogs, there are the West German working lines, there are what are referred to as the DDR. The DDR dogs are no longer being bred to the standards that the DDR, the Democratic Deutsche Republic, East Germany, imposed in their breeding program. So now these East German line dogs are being bred according to the breeder standards using the dogs that came from those lines. So some argue that there are really no DDR dogs left because, again, the breeding program of East Germany has ceased since East Germany has ceased to exist. That said, yes, the genetics of the dogs in these lines still exist. However, the dogs that you select for breeding do make a huge impact on the dogs you produce. So if you're selecting dogs from DDR lines currently that have poor temperaments, poor nerves, they're not going to have the same guarding abilities and solid nerves as dogs that are being selected that have superior, working capabilities and clear nerves. There's a lot more that can be said about these lines, but that's just a short analysis. That said, going back to what I said about working German Shepherds being mistaken for Malinois, the original German Shepherd was a dog that had a straight back with a very gentle slope in the croup and without insane overangulation. They had, compact muscle. They were well built, good bone, and they also had a, pronounced chest, not too pronounced as in, for example, a Mastiff, some of the Mastiff breeds, but, still a solidly built dog. Malinois are very different. The working line German Shepherds actually resemble Malinois, except they have a larger head, a wider head, wider muzzle, more stop. They also have a larger skull, and they have a more pronounced chest. They will have a little bit more angulation in the hind legs, and they are not as squarely built. They have a longer back, but not as long as the show line German Shepherds. So they also should have a pronounced tuck, and bone can vary between, medium to heavy. They're not fine boned like the Malinois are. The Malinois do not have a pronounced chest. They have long, lean legs with very fine build. And one of the most common things I have heard from people that that have purchased purebred Belgian Malinois. I'm not talking about BRN lines, NHSB or NVBK, because there is some outcrossing that is done in those lines. Is that they buy a dog and then they are incredibly underwhelmed when they find that the dog is very lean, hard to keep weight on, and very light, lithe in their build. And it's that light build that makes them so incredibly agile, right? The heavier the bone on a dog, the more weight on a dog. I'm not talking about overweight. I just mean, the more muscle the dog is, the less agile they're going to be. So there's pros and cons, and it depends on what the purpose of the dog is and what you're looking for. Now, in terms of temperament, I see a lot of comparisons that, a Belgian Malinois is, the smartest dog in the world, the best protector, and all that. I've owned purebred Belgian Malinois. I've owned purebred German Shepherds. I've owned mixes of both. I personally do not prefer one over the other. I see the pros and cons to each. One of the most common reasons why I have known people that have purchased Belgian Malinois instead of a German Shepherd is because of health. And why is that? Well, the German Shepherd, excluding mutts, is the third most popular dog in the United States. That is huge. What does that mean? That means a lot of people are breeding them. And it doesn't always mean that good people are breeding these dogs. It doesn't mean that they are doing all the requisite health clearances on dogs. And I don't simply mean Embark, which Embark is a great tool for breeders. But I mean OFA or pen hip testing on hips and elbows, degenerative myopathy, eyes, care to check eyes. So all of these things should be done in a good breeding program to make sure you are selecting the best breeding candidates, in addition to temperament testing. And for German Shepherds, they're supposed to be protective. They're supposed to be well-rounded. They're supposed to be the jack-of-all-trade utilitarian dog that can be, protecting your property during the day and then cuddling up with the kids at night. They're supposed to be a dog that can work all day, but can also settle in the home and have a great off switch. And that off switch, I would say, is one of the most defining factors that separates the German Shepherd, working or not, from the Belgian Malinois. Belgian Malinois, if you look for good breeders, one thing you'll notice is when they're describing their breeding dogs is clear nerves, clear-headed. Can give 110% on the field, but can also turn it off. And that is very important, although it's not as common in the Belgian Malinois, because they do have genetic propensities to be neurotic. That neuroticism plays very well for them in work, because being able to be neurotic and pattern cognizant and able to replicate behaviors, in doing all of these activities, having, doggy OCD can be an advantage. There are disadvantages, however. Sometimes these dogs display behaviors that are undesirable and make them more difficult to work with. And for example, there's been a gene identified in Malinois as the A22 gene, making them, having, it causes them to have outbursts of aggression. And what's known among the working dog world is that Malinois have a tendency to redirect on the handler when they're in drive, more so than the German Shepherd. Meaning, if they are excited and being agitated and they want to do some bite work, for example, they might be so excited that they might redirect and bite the handler. This is something that is common. And actually, to all the people that would say that one dog is superior over the other, I would say, well, if that's the case, then why are they crossing these lines? Why are they crossing these breeds? police right now specifically, they use Malinois, they use German Shepherds, but they are also specifically seeking out crosses of each breed. And crosses is something I want to get into more about, because crosses can actually look like purebred of either breed. When you're breeding a black and tan German Shepherd to a fawn Malinois, the fawn is usually dominant over the black and tan, unless you're breeding sable to sable. So you will get a dog that might have the coat of the Malinois, and it might look like a Malinois in every way, but only slightly larger, maybe the head slightly bigger, a little bit more bone, not as large as a German Shepherd, but a little bit larger than a Malinois. So people are thinking that they're Malinois, but they're actually crosses. Some people call them Malinois X. That this is derived from the Dutch pedigrees, where the BRN dogs, they will label dogs that are crossed Dutch Shepherd Malinois as ex-herders or ex-Malinois, and they don't just cross with Dutch Shepherd and Belgian Malinois. They also utilize working line German Shepherd and sometimes off breeds. And when I say off breeds, there has been a lot of speculation, although I think it's pretty accurate, because I've seen canned PV line dogs that have pit bull in them. So there's been speculation that pit bull has been added to some Malinois lines. Also Mastiff. A couple years ago, a female Presa Canaria was bred to a canned PV line. I forgot if it was a Malinois or a Dutch Shepherd, but let's just say ex-herder, which means ex-shepherd in English. So I will show examples in my videos of these dogs that are clearly outcrossed. I'm seeing also a lot of Malinois that are 90, 100 pounds with big blocky heads, and that is not normal. It only takes 4 generations to be registered as a purebred. Also, paper hanging happens all the time with a lot of different dog breeds. But something to keep in mind is working dogs, specifically for working dogs, purebred pedigree should not matter. It does not matter. What matters is, can the dog work? Is the dog hardy? Are we going to be able to invest a lot of money in training into this dog, and the dog's going to be able to perform and live long enough that we got our value out of the dog? I've heard directly from operators themselves that one of the reasons that they pick, specifically with the special forces, the Malinois over the German Shepherd, is because of a couple things. One, the tighter coat, better for a desert war environment, right? That thick plush coat of the German Shepherd can be a drawback, and they can overheat more quickly. And then also, in addition to the coat, the size. Back in the day, and even still, some people would want, a 100-pound German Shepherd to be their dog, their working dog, the dog that they handled. And can you imagine carrying that? Can you imagine jumping out of a helicopter with a 100-pound Shepherd on your back? That's a lot to carry. So it was, they realized that the Malinois, while there's pros and cons to the Malinois can do the work, and there were benefits, less likely to overheat, lighter to carry. Also, because they had not been overbred yet, and this is something I touched on earlier, and this is huge. Overbreeding is an extremely detrimental factor in regards to a dog's health and also their function, their temperament, because dogs are just being bred for money, and anybody and their neighbor starts breeding a dog because they have a German Shepherd, or the German Shepherd looks beautiful, but the German Shepherd has terrible nerves. But because it's so gorgeous, they figure, well, let's breed it. And then what happens? We create puppies that are beautiful, but they don't have the same well-rounded temperament, protective instincts, clear-headed, clear nerves as German Shepherds are intended to do. So essentially, we're dealing with dogs that will have, less likelihood of having health problems that will require veterinary care, which is a huge factor in, for police and military, because they invest a lot of training and a lot of money into these dogs. And, just like regular, lay people, they don't want to have to take a dog to the vet all the time. They need a dog that is hardy. And also because they're slightly smaller, it's less money to feed them. Now, I will say that now the fact that there is a lot of crosses being used, police and military, we're seeing even hardier dogs because, so in the Dutch KNPV program, they, or in the, for the breeders that in this program, they encourage outcrossing because genetic diversity is one of the most instrumental factors in the health of a dog. Inbreeding, or line breeding can be okay sometimes when we are utilizing dogs that are known to be healthy. And you have to be very careful with this because if there are any recessive traits that will impose health problems on puppies produced when you are doing line breeding or inbreeding, if the puppies have a higher chance of inheriting two copies of that negative recessive trait, and then they will present with the condition, that whatever health condition it was. So by outcrossing, we are increasing genetic diversity and the coefficient of inbreeding, and we are enhancing the dog's health. So anyway, there's a lot more that can be said. One thing I wanted to notate was that bulldog blood has been infused in some lines specifically to improve fight drive. Bulldogs have that inherent trait. The Shepherd, whether it's Belgian or German or Dutch, provides control and trainability. And, they've even infused Great Dane if they need more size. I've even heard of Border Collie being infused into some lines. So anyways, I can go more in depth about this. There's so much to say. It's such an interesting topic about how working dogs are bred. I'm going to follow up this video with pictures of different types of working dogs so you can kind of visualize the, what purebreds look like and what crosses look like, and you can really see how it's hard to tell sometimes. But if you are familiar with these breeds and have worked with them long enough, you can see the deviations and you can see where outcrossing has been introduced. And I want to, caveat that by saying outcrossing, it takes many, many, many generations to perfect. It's not simply, oh, you take a Malinois and breed it to a German Shepherd. That can happen, and you can have a great litter produced from that. But a lot of times it's many, many, many generations. For example, they might outcross and then breed back, and 12 generations later, they get the result that they're looking for. So, for example, there's a very famous kennel in the United States that produces a lot of working dogs, and they have a female that looks like a Mastiff mix, to be honest. A Mastiff Shepherd mix. It's a female. She's like over 100 pounds. And as it turns out, Great Dane was added into the lines. I'm sure other breeds as well. But Great Dane was added into the lines along with Dutch and Malinois and probably German Shepherd as well, many, many, many generations back, and it still pops up. Um, and I'll show pictures of this dog in my future videos. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment. I'm always curious to hear what people have to say, and I'm really fascinated by dog genetics. So thank you for watching this video, and have a great day.